Welcome back to part two of my delightful conversation with the ever creative Jessy Serrano as she continues her conversation here in the Humor and Chaos podcast. Sometimes that is a tongue twister. I'm Sarah Howard Nelson. I'm a resilience coach, certified life coach, and certified art therapy practitioner. And in today's podcast, part two, Jessy goes on to share the struggles she went through with her surgery and navigating going to a new high school, and which I happen to know she did beautifully because it was shortly after her surgery and shortly after starting this new high school that she met her future husband, her now husband, who also happens to be my son. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and I hope you catch on, especially to the support system that supported her support system, namely her parents. It's a wonderful story. And here you are. Enjoy.
Um, so Tuesday was kind of a wash, it just kind of came and went. I imagine that we were now telling people in the family. I wasn't telling as many people. I was just, existing and getting through my summer. And, um, I imagine my parents were telling people because of what happened later. But on Wednesday, so the day before my surgery, this was probably one of the biggest things that I did to take control of my situation. Um, I went out to lunch with my sixth grade teacher, and then she took me out for ice cream, and we met with my third grade teacher. And those are hands down my two favorite teachers that I've ever had. And at this point, like, we're friends with them on Facebook, so my parents got a hold of them, and they both wanted to, go out. And I mean, it was just so sweet, and I just, everything was just very princess treatment for me. And then my nana picked me up and we went to a salon. And I mean, my hair was easily halfway down my back. And we chopped all of it off. I wasn't bald. It was still very stylish. We were comparing me to, at the time, Anne Hathaway just after Les Mis came out, because she had real short hair after that, and it was very cute on her. And so that was my celebrity comparison. um, she said, they're probably gonna have to cut your hair when you go get surgery. And I said, yeah, I mean, I kind of hope they do, for sanitary reasons. And she said, so, why don't we just go crazy? Just chop it off. Do it. Let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. And I think they donated my hair because it was, I hadn't touched my hair. I hadn't ever done anything to my hair. I didn't even, like, I survived the epidemic of hair straighteners without straightening my hair more than a handful of times. I never owned one, like, it was a no heat style. um, and that was like really like my moment of like power in it. Um, and then we went out to dinner that night. Family came out. We had ultimately family coming out from states away. Um, my papa had very recently moved to Colorado, and they dropped stuff off and turned around and came right back so they could be there for me, but more importantly for my parents. Um, so, I got to have just a really good, little send off before the big day. And then on Thursday, July 25th, 2013, very, very, very early in the morning. Holy cow, it was early in the morning. We got up and we drove into Los Angeles and got in there, and they gave me a visitor badge, which I thought was weird. I said, I'm the patient here. I think I should get a patient badge, but okay, I guess. And I was admitted, and that was the first time. I forgot about this. That was the first time in this process, first of about half a dozen times that I was called a boy, with my newly cut hair, and I was like, and it was like the nurse that was kind of setting me up in pre-op. Oh, I forgot, I did go get my nails done too. So my nails were like fluorescent orange. That's important. Um, and I was wearing, what I thought was a pretty feminine shirt. It was long sleeve. It was purple, had flowers over, like big, like 3D flowers. And she kept saying, like him, or like, how much does he weigh, and what, and I was like, I am a girl, and this happened multiple, multiple, multiple times. So, short hair. That's what did it. That's all that it took. Um, Very grateful for the fact that they were able to get one IV in. They knocked me out. My operation was delayed by a significant amount of time. I think about an hour, because
Mm.
they couldn't get my arterial line placed. So I eventually left the hospital. I was bruised in every conceivable place that the arterial line could go.
Oh, wow.
Between that, and then eventually I needed, ports, and they needed to put, meds in and take blood out. And I just had bruises everywhere you could think.
Mm.
Um, and that was fun. But eventually they did do it, and it was a long surgery. And, I came to find out afterwards that there were a ton of people in the waiting room for my parents.
Mm.
I was accepting my fate. Like, I was like, doctors got this. Like, there's only so much I can be scared about. I got, the normal jitters because it's a surgery, and that's pretty scary. But
Mhm.
I was worried about them because I knew it was going to be tough on them. I was just going to have to ride the ride, and they had to watch.
Yeah.
So I was and am incredibly grateful for all the family and friends that were there, especially that day. Even, they were telling me like, oh, well, we can only have so many people in here. Some of us went across the street to like the fast food place, or, whatever it was that people were, but that they were there. And, one person, brought food for my parents. And, some people just like were hanging out, and just anybody who had a role in any capacity. I know a friend of the family started a little prayer group for me that day, or like, had like a little circle, and they were praying for me that day. And I felt it. I just felt all of it. And it was a lot of love. And so, I mean, one of the like things when it comes to medical situations is like, have a support system. Like, but we didn't even have to ask twice, and had more support system than we know what to do with. If I was ever, well, okay, I mean, so eventually, they're updating my parents, and they come out. I'm like, okay, surgery's done. Um, at the very end, they've closed me up, and I had asked the doctor for a picture of my brain, because that's a once in a lifetime chance that I can ask him, and he forgot.
Oh, no.
Because I assure you that would still be framed today if he had gotten that picture.
I would want to see it. Yes.
It would have been great. And he went out to my parents and said, Jesse's gonna kill me. I forgot to take her picture. I was like, I mean, I'm alive. I can only be so mad because you were successful. I just don't have a picture of my brain. I hope we don't get another chance to get one. And he was like, okay. Um, Ultimately, we got out about half of the tumor, because a lot of it was so, like, he called it sticky, like bubble gum,
Oh,
which is never how I imagined a tumor at all.
me
But I
neither.
think a lot of how I picture it is in the form of like a book, where they are, adding color to things for you to be able to see the different structures and the different everything. So I was like, oh, well, it's probably like a different color. And you probably just kind of like peel it up a little bit, and you take it out, and it's done. It's not how that works, apparently. Maybe it is in some parts, but it wasn't in the middle of my brain. That's not how it worked. Um, there was a little chance they were going to have to put in a shunt, which I still don't fully understand the mechanics of, but I didn't need one. And I'm very grateful for that. Um, so they you know pulled me out from being under, and they had me closed up, and I did wake up in the OR. I have almost no memory of it, which is great. And then I got to like become conscious, and both my parents were there, and I didn't have my glasses on, so everything was very blurry and everything was very sore. um and come to find, I think they had like they put my arm on a board, I think, and that was like the big thing, like that hurt my arm. And I wasn't warned about, oh no, I was in pre-op. They warned me about being intubated, which is fair. It's a big surgery, and nobody warned me how much it was going to hurt afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
I wasn't awake for any of it going in or coming out, but afterwards I was like, ooh, I feel it. That's a good raspy, just pain, just pain. So I was laying there, and I'm just like, it's all just indistinguishable pain. I'm like, this kind of sucks. I kind of
Mhm.
don't like it.
Mhm.
And they wheeled me to my room, and gave everybody the update. And I proceeded to spend 5 days in the pediatric intensive care unit. They did have to have a drain because of all of the spinal fluid that had built up in the ventricles. um I learned so much through this, like just about the body in general.
Mhm.
So they had to like keep it level. So anytime I wanted to like shift, I'd say, hey, I want to move. I'd say okay, and then I'd move, and then they'd go re-level my drain.
Oh, wow.
And so sleep was a precious commodity and really hard to come by. um Everything was just a little bit wrong the whole time. The jello wasn't brand name jello, so I didn't want it. The bed was just too hot, but they insisted I wear socks. I couldn't move my head because of the drain. So everything was just a little bit, all first world problems, but just a little bit off. So it just felt ick. Eventually when I could move my hands, so they had still shaved down the top of my head, but they left what I started calling the monk fringe, sort of this like strip of the rest of my hair that they didn't need. It was very brotherly, and it got covered in betadine.
Right.
So eventually I'm touching it.
Y-
Oh, it's grimy. It's gross. But I'm laying up against the hospital bed. So there wasn't much, I couldn't be like, hey, let me just go shower this off real fast. So, you know, everybody who could was doing their best to just kind of help me. I got the hospital sponge bath, and a no water foaming wash thing that smelled like heaven. Probably just because it was clean, but it smelled so good.
In contrast.
In contrast to the griminess in my hair, and just the ick of like the bandage that they took off my arm earlier, and it's still sticky and I can see it. Just any of that just any sense of comfort. And the princess treatment continued. I was, I think, the oldest patient on the pediatric intensive care unit. So, and like from what I could hear a couple of babies. I think I heard about one at one point. I think a 1 or 2 year old came in with an allergic reaction to something, and my heart went out because that's scary. You got a little baby who I imagine started swelling up all of a sudden. I was like, oh, that kills. And then there was the 15-year-old, over in that room. Hey, um, they came in at one point and they're like, what color do you like? I like pink. Pink is nice. Like, okay. And they came back and they're like, this is everything pink that we can offer you. Woo, thanks. And I got a clipboard with a pad of paper on it. And I couldn't really write because I couldn't really bend my arms and I couldn't look down, but it was so sweet. And they're like, okay, well, we didn't have a pink blanket. We have a purple blanket. And then we have this quilt. And I was like, the purple blanket was just like a rolled up, very basic, like thin fleece situation, and this quilt. It looks like maybe like somebody's first quilt that they've made. And if not, this is just something somebody's like putting out to give to hospitals. Very basic, like nothing is coordinated on it. They're all just big squares, little tie in the middle, just, solids and, funky patterns and outdated patterns. And, it's bugs and cars and teddy bears and letters.
Hmm.
And I absolutely fell in love with that quilt because it just, it touched my heart that it got to that hospital and then it was offered to me. And I mean, to this day, I'm like, it's a good nap quilt. It fits me perfectly. It's the perfect weight, and I think just everything that quilt has been through with me, I think is really what makes it.
Mhm.
So, but I was never alone in that room for more than probably 20 minutes. There was always somebody, there was always family or my parents or friends, somebody who could come see me. I had my cousin come in one time and they were like, "Oh, I remember like when you were a baby and we would feed you." And I had pasta that night. So she was like, "Here comes the airplane." 15, I'm like, "Ah, give me the pasta." We just got to have a lot of laughs with that. They're like, "That was the last time you were this helpless. When was when you were, a year old?" um, and just feeling so much love while feeling very uncomfortable, but but emotionally very loved. Um, so I get out of there. My last day, there was like an improv troupe going around the hospital, so I got to see them, and I was like, I'm getting out of here, I'm glad you guys are here today. This is great, thanks. And um, at one point my brother like drew me a picture and we put it up where I very much could not see it because I didn't have glasses for probably 3 days. Um, then I finally did, and I couldn't turn my head, but I was like, my brother's picture. We almost forgot it in the room, and somebody had to run up and go get it. Um, got to go home and have a good meal and, learn how to exist with a healing brain.
Yeah.
Like I'd healed emotionally from things. I'd healed from a scraped knee and, whatever else. I had my wisdom teeth taken out. But, when your brain is physically affected, it's just such an indescribable thing. And have to sit there and be like, I just don't feel quite like me. And they'd be like, please don't think so hard. Please just sit there. You're going to heal better if you just sit there, please. And I was trying to do things because I was bored and, and having to learn how to get out of bed slowly. So, like things didn't move around too quickly and I didn't fall out of the bed from getting up too fast. And um, just learning how to like cope with that and learning that, once my bandage came off, the air conditioning on my shaved head was very cold. It was an odd thing to experience because I'd always had hair. And suddenly it's blowing across my scalp. And I'm like, I started wearing bandanas, not because I was trying to hide my scar, but because it was chilly in August. I was sometimes I was wearing a scarf just to wear the scarf, more as fashion. And maybe I didn't want to scare somebody with how red and angry the top of my head looked. But never be out of shame. You'd have family members being like, "Oh, we'll get you wigs." I was like,
Hmm.
that sounds very uncomfortable, honestly. Um, I did also the top of my head has feeling now, but it's been almost 12 years. I spent a good probably half that time without feeling the top of my head.
Wow.
I'll just kind of touch it and be like, I can hear that I'm touching my head, and then my finger knows that I'm touching my head, but there's a lack of sensation there. Which also like I just wasn't prepared for.
Mhm.
It was just weird.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't think of that.
No, afterwards, I reasoned it out. I'm like, well, obviously, yeah, they cut through nerves as well, and those nerves are trying to heal back, and I hope they do someday. But it was strange. Um, so we've got checkups, and that's when they started checking my eyes, and we're like, did they check your eyes before the surgery? I'm like, no, we had a week, generously. Like, okay, well, we'll do what we can. And then that's when we really got to talk about the other half of the tumor that was left, and the doctor said, we're going to send you in for radiation. And so it's going to be every weekday for a total of 30 days. So it's supposed to be a 6-week regimen. So I would have started that in August. And so, we find this out, and within all of this, I'm also supposed to be starting a new school in August. I'm going
Right.
to a new high school,
Mhm.
which was decided way before we knew any of this was happening. Um, my best friend, who I mentioned earlier, had had the growth spurt. She was already there, and we met up in the summer before my surgery. And when she was like, "All right, I'm going to show you my yearbook, and I'm going to introduce you to everybody, and through this yearbook, I'm going to tell you, who's in, who's out, who's hot, who's not." Um, and she did mention my husband in this. She's like, "Oh, there's this guy. I think you'd like him. He's pretty cool." Um, and so it is weird to know that my best friend knew my husband, and I knew my husband's best friend before we knew each other.
That's right.
So we both have that claim to each other's friends. But so now she's we get confirmed, because it was I had to interview to get into the school. So we
Mhm.
confirmed that, hey, I'm getting in, and now all this has happened, and now end of August and all of September I'm supposed to be going to radiation every day. Starts between like 9 and 10 in the morning. It's like, okay, well, I can be there for half an hour of my first class if I have an 8 a.m. class. And then I have to leave, and it's in Los Angeles. It's not even anywhere close. It's a good 40 miles away.
Uh-huh.
So, like, okay, well, if the traffic is normal, then I can, it'll be 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back. And we're doing just all the math. And eventually we're like, I don't think school's gonna work. So we talked to the high school, and they were also very generous. And they said, you know what? After school, we can send over one of your teachers. And so they started sending my chemistry teacher over. And they're like, okay, so she's gonna give you the chemistry lesson because that's what she can do. And then the other teachers are all gonna give you homework through her. And I was like, cool, okay. I guess that's how this is gonna have to go. So I was like part-time homeschooled
Mhm.
for about a month.
Mhm.
Um, and it was very helpful, because then I had two people I knew at the school. I had my best friend, and I had the chemistry teacher. So I had like two ways. So I didn't have to go in there completely blind. I could say, oh, I know Miss So and so. And yeah, I know my friend. Yeah, we're best friends since second grade. We know each other. Um, and it eased the otherwise awkward transition. And in the meantime, roll call is being called in the classroom, and people are hearing, and Jessy, someone being like, oh yeah, she sits there eventually. And there was this empty desk and this mystery Jessy that was missing from class for over a month. I ultimately didn't go back in to school because of weird scheduling until after fall break. So we're looking at the first school week of October, when I actually got to go to 10th grade for the first time. Um, Scratch that. I went to back to school night just so I
Oh,
could
okay.
just I wanted to see the school. I asked my mom if I could go, and my brother went with, and um, he had a funny moment there. But I got to go and like meet some people who had gone. And my best friend was there to kind of chaperone me around and show me some stuff. And it was a tiny, tiny school, so I
Yep.
didn't, it's not like I needed a grand tour. She's like, here's one hallway, here's the other hallway, that's our
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
It's like, wow, like I came from a
I
big
know.
high
I was there. Yeah.
I came from something that was
Huge.
buildings and buildings and buildings. And she was like, we have an H shape, that's ours. And a couple of tables outside. Okay. all right. Um, so I get there in October and everyone starts going, oh, so we've heard a lot about you because you've been missing for a very long time. Not not because I wanted to be.
Mhm.
Um,
Did you feel welcome?
I did. I did. I mean, it was a really tiny community. There were more people when I got there, but ultimately we graduated with 100 people. So it was quite small, and and it helped to have two rather key people that knew me, because my best friend has, I mean, light blonde hair, very light blonde,
Mhm.
and at the time she wasn't coloring it yet. Now she does. Um, I think it's pink right now. But at the time it was like, okay, so everybody knows her,
Mhm.
and everybody in our grade knows the chemistry teacher.
Mhm.
So it's like, I'm going in with, I'm going in and I'm not knowing a nobody. I'm knowing somebody,
Mhm.
and having that, like I said, just that little anchoring of, I have, I do belong here, and oh, well, do you know my best friend? Oh, you do. Fantastic. What's your name? Let's get into this and let's start making my own friends. And she had a friend group I could sort of incorporate into, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and all that, that session with her yearbook really helped. Really, really helped, because then she'd be like, oh, here's John Smith. Like, oh, John Smith. Oh, nice to meet you. It's great. It's great. um, and just through that, I was healing and growing my hair back from all the things that had happened to it. I had, before school, we did in fact go what I refer to as full Britney Spears, and we shaved it in the backyard, just to make it all even and get rid of the fringe in the back. And so letting that grow in over the months, and shake off the radiation. And I mean, I went on to like do a bit for the yearbook, and they're like, we're going to interview you because you're the mystery missing person, and now you're here. It's like, cool, put me in, coach. That's fine. I'll go in the yearbook. Um, and I graduated from the school, and made lots of friends and one husband, and didn't suffer at all for having missed what I missed. Um, and now just things have been progressing. There are some things, almost side effects, I think we could say, of the surgery and the radiation and the tumor all sort of combining. I'm not absolutely positive what everything is, what all the ultimate effects are. There are a lot of things. If I trip on the street outside and be like, ah, darn, it was the radiation. I don't know what to tell you. If I go set off the metal detector somewhere, be like, oh, I'm radioactive. Sorry, and it was irradiated for a month. Um, because I don't know ultimately what all I can blame on it, so I will choose everything to blame on it. Oh no, the bananas went bad. That's the radiation. I don't know what to tell you. um, just because this is my reality of living with what I now do. So we continue to, we're constantly monitoring this thing. There was a little bit where I was going for an MRI every 6 months. It's
Mhm.
about as far out as I've stretched it, because we were far out, and then, oh, it looked like there was some activity. We're gonna bring you in every 3 months again. Grand, thank you. I love coming in for MRIs. Um, and we're back out. We have a little bit of a longer schedule now, and where I had to change insurance. Now we're like kind of establishing the care at the same time. But they're like, I think it's okay. I think you're okay. Like, we want to get a baseline for our sake, and then, but I think you're fine. Like, are you any big symptoms? I'm like, no. But anytime I feel any kind of head pain at all, it's a little scary. It's a
Because I mean,
little,
let's be clear. You are living with a brain tumor. It's not all gone. It's there.
yeah. And I think it will likely always be there.
Mhm.
There were some talks about, when it was kind of acting up, there were some talks about going in for another surgery.
Mhm.
And these talks freaked me out much more than the first one because they said, oh, well, we can go in through your temple, and there's just something about the temple that freaks me out. Like, no, don't touch it, please. Like, or not to be super gruesome, or we'll go through your nose.
Oh, fun.
I'm like, don't touch my nose either. I'm happy with where it's at. Don't do that.
I like my notes. Don't know.
And then like to I don't know, to have to think about like, do they bandage my nose afterwards? Like what at the beginning of after my surgery is I had stitches and a bandage. I had dissolvable stitches, which I thought was strange, but I was happy to not have to go get them out. Um, and that was easy. But I'm like, you going through my temple? What? I'm gonna be like a rat bandage? Like you going through my nose? We have to like stuff gauze up my nose? What's the course of action? I don't want to have to deal with any of that. So hopefully this doesn't come to pass because I will be asking them all of these ridiculous questions before I ask the important ones. And they know this. um so it is still there, and I think it some of it will always be there, unless technology goes somewhere absolutely insane and they're like, hey, we can just fix a lot for you if we do one more operation, then I might say sure. But for now I'm happy with it being a one-time thing as long as it behaves itself. um Especially after having the radiation, which was I mean infinitely less pleasant. Just like side thing on that, they gave me like a plastic mask where they molded to my face and then would like screw me down to the table. Like they had some kind of like fastener to like hold the mask down, and that way I wouldn't move and mess anything up. And then they would
Mhm.
just move me around on this table. I would 1,000% rather have an MRI than do radiation.
Wow.
It was not great, but I got music for it. That was key to, to it being any kind of tolerable. Um, anyway, that's all just kind of tangential, but just I'm here and I get to laugh about it. And I did say, at the time I was more relieved, I think, than I was scared.
Mhm.
Um, oh, and I have formed my own theory outside of what my doctor had said. I think that based on my timeline, when my headache started, it started growing.
Mhm.
And then I got to get, a little way into hitting my developmental milestones. And then I think it got big enough to start blocking signals from my pituitary gland, which is why I stopped growing. Eventually, I did check, and they're like, oh, all of your growth plates that would be allowing for movement in your bones, they've all fused, which means you are done growing. I said, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Didn't know about growth plates. I would have said it if I had known. Um, so I think that, around sixth grade was when it got big enough to take bigger action. And then we found it 3 years after that. That's my working theory. I don't know that we can prove it. It's just enough to placate me, I think. I
Yeah.
don't need that timeline, but I was right once. I can be right again.
Yep.
I think I can be right again. So, that's sort of where it is, and it's just, it's just part of the story now.
Mhm.
It isn't something that was I mean, I don't think that was so scary. It was incredibly life altering. But again, in the way that I got to feel all of that love, and I got to feel the validation of having had a correct theory,
Mhm.
a baseless correct theory. Um, and I think that's kind of what I would really want to tell anybody is, that's such a minor thing, but no matter who you are or what your circumstances are, I think that you need to celebrate any victory, no matter how tiny they are, because it goes a long way. to helping you, it goes a really long way. I think. I mean, I didn't, do it twice. Go, I'm going to be doom and gloom this time and I'm going to be happy about it the next time. I lived it the way I lived it, and I obviously I don't want to diminish anybody who's had something worse. Ultimately, my tumor was benign. I don't have to fear it yet.
Mhm.
And people go through much worse. And this isn't a competition. This isn't a race. But I think that, no matter what you might be going through, be like, I didn't put my shoes on the wrong feet today.
Mm.
I actually got my shoes right today. How
Mhm.
neat, I got I got my hair in the perfect ponytail today, which I can never say about myself. It's always acting up like this. It Since we shaved it, it grew back with its own mind, and that's what I live with now, as well as the tumor is crazy, crazy hair. um, but just anything at all that you can latch onto. My big one was the hospital had way better food than I thought it was gonna have. Crazy. I discovered plain cream of wheat with white sugar in it. What an idea. I had my first bran muffin and it was really good. you know, that the grand scheme of things, people can walk in and be like, "Do you understand that you had a tumor?" Be like, "Yeah, but you didn't taste this muffin." You know, and I mean, since then, like I haven't had as many of the issues. There's some things that have been reversible, some things that have not been reversible that, I'm on more meds now than I would care to be on. I did
Mm.
get to hold that over people, be like, yeah, I am 17 and I have X many prescriptions. Do you have any prescriptions? I bet you don't. um, and I mean, I was able to, I'm not 74 pounds anymore, and I'm sure if I were still going to my pediatric endocrinologist, he'd be like, nice. But he did eventually retire. I think he got sick of me. And he's like, I'm done. I'm done with the profession. Goodbye. And now I just
Maybe.
have an adult endocrinologist.
You're disappointed.
Um, my current team, nobody's as sarcastic as he was. He had the wit, everybody that I have now, I'm still getting to know my current team with changing insurance, but he had the wit and he had the idea to get me that MRI.
Yep. And thank you once again for joining me for what was now part two of my conversation with Jessy. And yeah, I hope you got out of it. She's such a bubbly personality. She doesn't talk directly about the joy in her life while she's been going through all of this, but you can feel it. You can hear it in her voice and you can feel it in her natural personality. She just she exudes joy. That is Jessy. So thank you again for joining us. And if you or someone that you know would be a wonderful guest for this podcast who has rediscovered or discovered joy after or in the midst of life altering situations, make sure to send them my way through my email, humorinchaos@gmail.com. Or you can contact me through my website, www.humorinchaos.com. So see you tomorrow for episode number three, or part number three, the next episode, where Jessy goes on to talk about how she finds joy in the simple things in her life as she continues to live with her chronic condition. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.